Um, wow, it is bright. So I wanted to thank Louis for having me, especially since I don't actually have a story in Vlak 2, but I did have one in Vlak 1, as well as in the Prague anthology, which Louis edited, and I lived in Prague for a year and a half, and now I live in Brooklyn. So I'm going to kind of turn this way. This is a weird little piece that I wrote a couple of years ago. It's kind of a fake children's story. It's called The Child Grenadiers of the 4th International. The Child Grenadiers are coming down the hill. From my perch on the Recamier in the afternoon sun, I can see them clearly, smudging the hillside like angry violets. Occasionally they frolic. I like to watch the frolicking Child Grenadiers as I sip my aperitif. Just this morning, they blew up Parliament and smashed the monuments, upended the clock tower, undecorated the war heroes, commandeered 9 golden zeppelins from the Royal Command, expuncticated the Arboretum, and released all the animals from the zoo. Now there's a Malayan tapir asleep in the gazebo, and the Child Grenadiers are tumbling over the soft dirt of the hillside, nosing at the earth like infants at a mother's breast. "It's your turn, my dearest," I call to Willoughby, rousing him with a tinkle of ice. He gives his knuckles a decisive crack as he soldiers across the flat green pane of the lawn, mallet over shoulder. I quiver like a drawn bow. Oh, the unsullied whiteness of him. The albescent sheen of his forehead gleaming like a polished billiard ball. The downy cheek, the fineness of his cotton woven 400 threads to the inch by orphans laboring over looms in a workhouse of remotest Luxembourg. His jumper, knit by Dominican nuns from the virgin wool of a snow-white lamb, the whisper of his starched trousers, the sharpness of his crease. Willoughby, who dabbles in symbolist poetry and copies only the best, most modern painters. Willoughby reading all the scandalous new novels. Willoughby donning Plattlerhosen and a pith helmet at the Amateur Mesmerists Club, trailing rumors like a schoolgirl's ribbons. Swishing his mallet back in a perfect arc, he clocks the Admiral's ball soundly, sending it skittering into green sunlight. The sun bleats down upon the hillside. The Child Grenadiers have dropped off to sleep. The Admiral is sitting cross-legged under a canopy of mosquito netting, sipping Javanese coffee and twisting the tips of his mustache into question marks. At Willoughby's behest he stands, tugs at his sock garters, adjusts his kimono, and tips his wig back onto his head. Today he is dressed as Madame Sadayako, mysterious jewel of the East, and is simply bewitching in a red kimono embroidered with cavorting dragons and swooping cranes. Dear old Admiral Crump, the wooden leg, the monocle, the scars from being simmered in an iron pot in the deepest jungles of the Congo. His face the color of fresh-laid brick, clouded with memories of ice flows in Victorialand, trade winds along the Nile, magic carpets hovering over the Casbah. A breeze wafts tenderly by, and the Admiral's eyebrows test the air like the antenna of some exotic insect of the Pampas or of the lower Crimnos-Fedorian Delta, to which remarkable locale the Admiral made an unprecedented solo expedition in the years preceding the onset of sundry nervous ailments, holding all the world in thrall with reports published in the subsequently, and to my mind unfairly, discredited Journal of the Hypothetical Geographers Society, Volume 13. Now, an airship stuffed to bursting with Child Grenadiers grumbles overhead, devouring sky and cloud. From out of nowhere, Dr. Pretorius appears, careering up the drive in his charming old Wyndham II. His pale, goggled face emerging from a whirl of dust and grease and grassy bits, he pats the mechanical beast as it utters its watery, dying last words, and with a solemnity that slices the warm bread of the afternoon, he speaks. "My dear friend," says he, as Rajiv is sent up to the house to fetch a glass of anisette and bromo-seltzer, "I wanted you to be the first to bear witness to my most outrageous, fantastical, and least practical invention yet. Willoughby the Admiral and I, ever Dr. Pretorius's faithful servants, hover around like children waiting to be told a bedtime story. I hope it is my favorite, where naughty Lieselot is punished for refusing to eat her blood pudding by being kicked down a flight of stairs by her stalwart governess, Mademoiselle L. "Well, tell us then, Pretorius, do get on with it," mutters Willoughby, as Rajiv returns with the doctor's elixir vitae, which he promptly declines, turning instead to Willoughby with an uncharacteristically curt, "Must you be so white, Willoughby? It's really quite blinding." And indeed, my dearest is emitting rather a harsh glare, refulgent as a brigade of seraphim. He rolls his eyes and with long white arms reaches out and hugs the spreading light close, stuffing it back up into his sleeves as best he can, but it merely changes course and begins seeping out his trouser leg, coating him with a fine, powdery glow. Perhaps a good dusting, muses the doctor, shielding his eyes. Perhaps a good beating, says the Admiral, retrieving a truncheon from the undulating hillocks of his black wig. Rajiv is dispatched once again, sent up to fetch 2 feather dusters, and returns post-haste. The Admiral and Dr. A, wasting not a moment, set upon Willoughby and begin dusting him crazily, great luminous puffs coming off him like explosions of fireworks into the mucky air. Their Admiral's kimono flies open, releasing a cloud of white fritillaries, the Doctor all knobby elbows and crumpling tweed, but alas, when they step back to admire their handiwork, nothing is left of Willoughby but a fuzzy puddle of white, his sweater nestled like a dove in a patch of sun-blackened weeds. "Oh, my poor dear," I cry and lunge for it, rubbing it against my cheek. "Oh, soft. It was the sweater I wanted all along." "Oh, dear," says the doctor, that wasn't supposed to happen." "Never mind," says the Admiral, brushing away several of the stickier butterflies. "It's just that he's gone off to join the Child Grenadiers. See there," and I can just make out Willoughby's reedy shadow on the hillside, sleeping soundly. "We'll all be there soon, I fear," he says, twisting the tip of a mustache. "Not so fast, Crump," exclaims the doctor. "For I, as the fates would have it, have just this morning hit upon the solution to all our worries. I awoke before dawn, had pressed her rosy cheek against the sky, roared at Aunt Gertrude, I dare say I frightened the poor woman something awful, to fetch me a cup of tea and 4 slices of dry, crustless toast, and to hide me down to my secret laboratory to set about my work. There, accompanied only by the Muse, a hopeless nag, poking at me with a gnarled blue finger, I, Florimond Albrecht Pretorius, M.D., M.A., M.S., Ph.D., M.C.A.S., D.M., A.B., A.B.A., etc., did contrive, from the inner mechanisms of 42 Bavarian music boxes playing Streitwolf's Das Mädchen aus der Fremde, a jar of pickled herring, 19 perspiration droplets collected from an adolescent schoolgirl's philtrum on the occasion of her defloration by a Belgian stevedore, the powdered fibula of a carnivorous sheldrake of the lower Crymnospodorian delta, 37 1/2 spherochromatids of hypnoluminous gleam extracted from the ether by way of an electro-atmospheric discombobulator, patent pending, a gyroscopic retrograde memory embosser, also patent pending, and my own theories about heliography, exphasic phrenology, and alchemical metatransference, a device which I shall now unveil, my dears, standing back in all due humility to allow you ample room to bask in the glow of my genius. So saying, he produces from its nesting place in the motorcycle's sidecar a huge, shapeless leather satchel, and with careful exactitude, fingers all a-tremble, extracts from the aforementioned an object of surpassing peculiarity, an item which possesses, to the utter flabbergastation of the Admiral and I, no clearly delineated edges or solidity of form, or indeed what might be commonly referred to as physical properties of any kind whatsoever, but which is instead a kind of shimmering golden mesh or web, finer and more delicate than that of the most meticulous spider. Indeed, it can hardly be called a something at all, more like a somehow, or perhaps even a somewhere. In any case, it is without question a true marvel of modern technology, a veritable testament to the resourcefulness of the human mind. The Admiral and I are beside ourselves. There ensues a brief and unduly awkward silence, punctuated only by the Admiral's befuddled murmurings and the Doctor's throat clearings, as if every moment preparing to speak again, then changing his mind, then changing it back again, standing alongside with arms outstretched, the web, or mesh if you like, we will call it that for the sake of convenience, dripping from his fingers and pooling around our feet. At last, as no further explanation appears to be forthcoming, I venture forthwith, "But what does it do exactly, my dear Doctor, and how will it save us from the Child Grenadiers?" "Fair flower, I thought you would never ask. I call this latest invention Pretorius's electroluminous dissolution spray for the removal of Child Grenadiers to the realms of tomorrow. Now see here, if you don't mind taking a few steps back. There we go. Although I call it a spray, in fact it is not a spray at all, more a container. Not really a container either, more of a storage device. In fact, it is a type of time machine. Well, not really a time machine after all. If you'll recall, I mentioned a certain memory embosser, on which I hold a patent to be reviewed by the Royal Patent Office in no less than a fortnight's time. As it happens, though I often refer to it thusly, it is in actuality more of a debosser. Yes, a memory debosser. The one which, in point of fact, does not perform a function quite like debossing, perhaps so much as one would hope. Well, after all, it is a matter of some complication, the finer scientific points with which I hesitate to perturb the clear blue lake of your mind, my dear. However, suffice it to say that Pretorius's electroluminous dissolution spray for the removal of child grenadiers to the realms of tomorrow performs a function absolutely unprecedented in the annals of modern scientific inquiry. That is to say, that indeed functions as my calculations would indicate, being that I have yet to test it out on any actual child grenadiers. Nevertheless, I am rarely, if ever, wrong about these things, so let's hope for the best, shall we? Far off, although not so far off as all that, so the child grenadiers arise as one, and they are picking blades of grass from their tousled locks, and they are rubbing the sleep dust from their eyes, and they are readying their artillery, and they are smoothing their rumpled uniforms, and they are falling in, forming ranks, and effecting a redeployment. And from the direction of the gazebo emanates a grunt, then a sort of hiccup, then a grunt, then a hiccup, a cacophony of appalling noises one can only take to mean, "Here now, where's my breakfast?"